Hi guys, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to The Wandering Reader. Today I'm here to give you some more thriller recommendations. Thrillers is my theme of the month for the month of May, and I have made another thriller recommendations video at some point last year, which I'll link for you if you haven't seen that. And I talk about a range of different thrillers in here, so I haven't watched that video back, so hopefully I'm not going to repeat any of the ones that I mentioned in that video, but I don't think I am going to be. So yeah, I've got a whole new load of thrillers to recommend to you today. The first of those is Lullaby, or The French Nanny, and this is by Leila Simani. This is translated from the French, I believe, and this is a domestic thriller that focuses around a family who hire a nanny to look after their two children so that the mother can go back to work. And it's about how this nanny infiltrates their lives, and at the beginning of the book, on the very first page, you learn that she has murdered the two children, and then you go back in time to when they first hire her. I really did enjoy this. I thought it was really sinister at times, and there were some great characters in here, and you really kind of wanted to keep reading to find out what made this nanny do this and what the circumstances that this happened in. There were a lot of unanswered questions for me in this. I mentioned this in my April wrap up. So yeah, you're not going to get an ending that ties everything up neatly and that answers all of the questions that you've got, but it's still pretty good and I would definitely recommend it. Next up I have The Breakdown, and this is by B.A. Paris. I read this last summer, and this focuses around a woman called Cass, and she's making her way home from work one day quite late at night, and she decides to take a shortcut because I think there's some sort of storm, and she wants to get home really quickly, so she decides to take this shortcut off of the motorway and onto this road where you have to pass through a forest, and her husband has told her very specifically, don't go on this road, you know, it's quite dangerous in that sort of weather, but she ignores him and goes on this road. And when she is driving down, she notices that there's this car on the side of the road, and there's a woman in the car, and she has to think about whether she should stop and see whether this woman is okay, but the woman doesn't look like she needs any help, so she just drives on and goes home. And then the next day it turns out that this woman has been found dead, and she's sort of obviously feeling really guilty about the fact that she didn't stop, and then weird things start to happen and the story goes from there. Really enjoyed this. I thought again the characters in this were great. I didn't see the big twist coming. I thought that was really well done, and I just loved it. I thought it had everything that I needed in a thriller, and this was a 5-star thriller for me, so I would definitely recommend this. I haven't read B.A. Paris's other two books. I've got her newest one on my shelf, but I really want to pick up those because I know that they're probably going to be very good like this one is. Next up I have Big Little Lies, and this is by Leanne Moriarty. I was having a little think about whether you would class this as a thriller, but I would say so, yeah. This is obviously very famous now because of the HBO show, and they are filming a second series, and don't really know what that second series is going to be about because I haven't watched the show. I have it still taped on my Skybox downstairs, but I believe the show closely follows the book and wraps up where the book does, so I don't really know where they're going to go with the second show. But anyway, this focuses around 3 female characters. They're all mums who take their children to what is effectively sort of like infant school, elementary school, something kind of like along those lines. And it kind of starts off as something quite minor that happens in the playground between a couple of children, and then that minor thing kind of escalates into something a lot bigger, and then we find out lots of things about these 3 women's lives, and yeah, it was just really excellent. This is a great thriller because it has commentary on it on a lot of really important topics, so being a parent, but also stuff about abusive relationships and rape and that sort of thing. Lots of really important topics covered in here, and I really like the way it did that. Absolutely love this one, gave it 5 stars, must watch the show. Next up I have here Shutter Island, and this is by Dennis Lehane. I read this for the Thriller-a-thon, was it earlier in the year? I think it was around February or something like that. Really liked this. I've heard that you enjoy this less if you've seen the film first, but I hadn't. So this focuses around a police officer who's been asked to go to this island where there's this sort of psychiatric hospital because a patient has gone missing. And he's basically tasked in trying to work out where this patient went and things like that. And then the story goes from there. And yeah, I'm not going to really say anything else because it will potentially spoil it. Really, really loved this one. Really liked the way that it played with the reader's mind. Left me kind of really thinking about exactly what had gone on in there and why it was sort of slightly ambiguous at the end. But I really liked it, and I would definitely recommend reading it. Next up I have here No Time for Goodbye, and this is by Linwood Barclay, and I have a number of Linwood Barclay's books, a few of which I haven't read, but I've read most of them, and these were a sort of like staple for me. One of these, and you can see the sticker up here actually, was on a Richard and Judy's summer reading list on Channel 4 and in WH Smith as well, and I sort of picked it up for that reason. I saw it as part of the list and thought it sounded interesting, and then that sort of sparked me picking up every single Linwood Barclay book that came out after that. And these are domestic thrillers where you have some sort of crime or murder happen at the beginning of the book, and instead of what I liked about them originally is that instead of focusing on the police and what the police were doing to investigate, they focused on a character close to the person who'd been murdered or the person who'd gone missing or something along those lines, and followed them as they kind of were trying to learn what had gone on and things like that. So yeah, and I'd never kind of read stuff, I mean I was quite young at the time, but I'd never read thrillers that had that kind of a premise behind them. I've read lots more since then. And this follows a character called Cynthia, and when she was younger her family disappeared and nobody could work out where they'd gone, and so she had to be brought up by other people, I think. And then it's 25 years later, she's married I think with her own child, and she receives a letter in the mail, and it references her parents or her family going missing, and then sort of like the mystery opens up again for her. And this is actually the start of a trilogy, but he didn't write the other two books until a lot later on. So I had the two other books on my shelf, but I don't think I've read them yet, or maybe I've read the second one but I haven't read the third one. I don't know, he's got like a couple of series going on now and I can't entirely work out the way that they run because I haven't kind of dedicated myself to reading them yet, but I just remember really enjoying these. Were really fast paced, really enjoyable, easy to read. I've read a couple in recent history and they haven't been as good as what I thought they were when I first picked them up, I suppose because my reading tastes have changed and I've developed as a reader and things like that, but they're still very, very enjoyable and I would definitely recommend them. Next up I have The Roanoke Girls, and this is by Amy Engel, and this focuses around a character called Lane, who is a Roanoke girl, and she is called back to her childhood home after having sort of moved away for quite a period of time because her cousin has gone missing, and they're trying to work out where her cousin has gone. And she moves back home and it opens up all of these memories about what life was like in this house with her grandfather, I believe. Yeah, it is her grandfather, and this all the different quite distressing things that happened in this house and what her life was like when she was younger, and then obviously it jumps back and forth in timeline, so you get Lane when she was younger and then you get Lane when she's back at the house now, and we find out different things about her and her life and things. I thought this is absolutely fantastic, really, really enjoyed it. And I think I gave this one something like 4.5 stars. Really, really enjoyed it. Again, it had some really quite dark and heavy topics in it, but really, really fast-paced, enjoyable, great characters, loved it. Another thriller I have to show you is The Childfinder, and this is by Renee Denfield. This is a proof copy of it, so the final copy looks a little bit different. I've done a full review of this on my channel, so if you haven't seen that I'll link it for you. This came out in January this year, and this basically follows this childfinder called Naomi, and she is called out by a couple whose daughter, Madison I think it is, went missing. I think a couple of years ago now, in the woods when they were going to cut down a Christmas tree. And so Naomi is asked to kind of find out what happened, see whether she can sort of find Madison or find her body or whatever. And the area where Madison went missing is where Naomi grew up, and there are some things about Naomi's past that aren't quite normal. Hesitate to they use that word normal, but you know what I mean. And so we find out a lot more about her life as well, and obviously you get the investigation. Really, really great writing in this. The setting was described really vividly, and it was really ethereal almost, and there were some lovely fairy tale aspects to this. Really enjoyed it and would definitely recommend it. And then the last thriller that I have to recommend to you is a trilogy really of sort of thrillers, and they are the Girl in 60 series. This is the Deanna Madden series, and this focuses around Deanna Madden, who's also called Jessica Riley, and she lives in this apartment on her own, and she's a cam girl, and that's how she makes her money. But she never leaves her apartment because she has these urges to kill. So she thinks if she locks herself in her apartment, then other people in the world are safe, and you know, nothing's going to happen that's bad. And then one day she's talking to this particular guy on cam, and something about what he says doesn't sit right with her, and she finds out something later in the news, and then the story goes from there. And then we get books 2 and 3, which follow her doing different things. Book 3 ends and you're left kind of wanting a little bit more, and there has been talk of her writing a 4th book, although she's not really announced anything about it. But it does sit really nicely as a trilogy. Really fast paced, really interesting. Really like Deanna's character, but there are also some other really great characters in here as well. You will fly through these. There are kind of some quite sort of like sexually overt moments in here, but they're not anything like really bad. But yeah, no, really enjoyable series. So there we go guys, they were all the thrillers that I had to recommend to you today. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these and what did you think of them? And have you got any thrillers to recommend to me? Because obviously thrillers are one of my favourite categories of books to read. So any that you think I would enjoy, please leave them in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.